It was December 15th, 1983, when Linda Vass stepped out into the blizzard and the snow because she was visiting a site that had been abandoned long ago in the Yukon Territory of Canada. This was called Site 14. Going to this site, she did not know what she was getting herself into. She was told that this was classified and that they needed her expertise, but what she realized was the work she was doing was actually going to bend reality and illusion. My name's Eric Whiteside, and your transmission is set to The Echo Diaries. Linda walked up to this old facility door, these metal doors that were frozen shut from the permafrost that had been all around this facility. It had taken the engineers a few hours to actually pry the doors open before she had arrived. So it was this cold, blizzardy facility that was ran by NORAD. It was an old facility called Site 14, and she had just arrived there, and it had been abandoned long ago. And what she didn't realize was it wasn't just like a regular facility. It was more like a fallout shelter. And she walked into this facility, and there was not these giant rooms that she expected, but these long corridors that had ran all throughout the building. And she'd have to walk through these corridors, and sometimes it would take several minutes for her to get there. And where she was stationed was near the rear of this giant facility, or this giant bunker. So she eventually got to the back of the facility, and when she got there, she realized, it was just as cold. There wasn't like the heating units like there used to be. It was a cold facility. And so she's in this back of this facility and in this room, and there in this room was already a woman waiting for her. She was a young woman, about 22 years old. And Linda, she didn't know her name. She didn't know where she came from. She didn't know who she was. What she could see was this woman had this kind of military outfit on, so she thought she was from some branch of the military. So she figured she had to work on this woman, but she still didn't know exactly why she was working on this woman. So this woman was there waiting for them, and they told Linda that this is your subject. Her name is Raven. This is the name we have for her, because the real name of her was classified. So Linda's still kind of confused. She's asking, well, what is it that I'm doing here? I just know you came to me and asked me to perform these duties. That's classified, and I can't say no. So why am I here? So they told her, you're a neuroscientist, and we're doing some of these studies, and we need your help. So she asked them, what are my duties going to be? And they said, well, you're going to hook Raven up to this machine, and you're going to look at how her mind responds neurologically to these questions we're going to ask. And she said, okay. And she's like, well, what kind of study is this? And they told her, they said, you're just running the test. We'll worry about the information that's produced. So she said, okay, I'll just run the test. So she started hooking this woman up, and then they closed the door of this chamber, and then they would watch her through the two-way windows. And so Linda was watching, and she didn't know what she was doing. She was just told to push certain buttons, so she kind of just pushed these certain buttons, and then all of a sudden, all these screens came on in the room, and she could see all these pictures flashing in the room. And she was kind of confused about what was going on in there, but the officer that was overseeing what she was doing told her not to look inside, and just to stay focused on the data. So that's what she did. So Linda was just sitting there, and then after a few hours, there was a ring, almost like the microwave when it went off. That's what she heard. And so Linda just kind of looked over at the data as the officer walked in the room to retrieve the woman. So when Linda was actually looking over this data, she was like, this isn't right. There's something strange about this. It wasn't just one neural wavelength that she was looking at. It was actually two neural wavelengths that she was looking at. So she was like, what is this? This is so confusing. I don't know how this is even possible. It's pretty much showing that there's two people in there. And so she was like, why are there two separate wavelengths? This doesn't make sense at all. And so she wanted to question the officer, but when she tried to question the officer said, don't worry about it. That's not for your information. Just look at the data. Does everything look okay? And so they asked her, they said, are there any kind of discrepancies in the wavelength? And she said, no, there's no discrepancies, but she still was kind of confused. She wanted to pry, but decided not to because, it's above her pay grade. The officer just said, okay, well, you're done for the day. Thank you. You can come back tomorrow. And as she was leaving the room, she could hear the woman in the background, and she was screaming. She's like, I saw it. The home that was destroyed and bombed. I saw it. It exists still. It didn't get destroyed. It's still there. And Linda, who was still confused, wanted to hear more, but before she could, she kind of got shoved out of the room. So after that, Linda, because she had traveled so long, and she went back to her room. It was just this cold bunker of a room. And there she just passed out because she was so tired. Well, over the next few weeks, she was just running these tests, and she saw these same kind of patterns on these different neuro tests. And she was so confused by it. And every time she'd hear this woman talking about this other place that she was going to, or her home, and that it existed, and this wasn't really reality, and that we were all living in some kind of fake reality. And she was just hearing these bits and pieces as time went on. And she's like wondering, what is this test that they're doing? What are they doing to this woman? She was like, are they showing her images of her home and she sees them through what we're doing to her? Like, she was very confused. This went on for many months and even into years. They were just testing on the same woman. And all of a sudden, these wavelengths that were once separated, they begin to kind of come together, almost as if they were kind of becoming one pattern. And this was the most fascinating part of it all, because she's like, what is going on with these patterns? And on that day that they came together, that's when everything changed. Linda went in like she normally did, and she plugged this woman Raven up to this test, and she ran the test like she normally did. And everybody was kind of tense on that day. There was something different about the officers. Like, they had some kind of foreseen knowledge that she didn't have, but something was off, and they weren't sure what it was. So the woman Raven, she was in her chair, she was ready to go. The chamber door locked behind her, and they started again doing the tests and running these visuals to her. But then something happened. All of a sudden, the machine, it started smoking and bugging out. Sparks were kind of flying out, and she was like, what is going on here? Something's going on in the machine. Something's going on with Raven. We got to get her out of there. And so the officers, they're trying to get the door open and trying to shut the machine off, but it was still going, like it was still running. And as they're doing this, Linda finally went up to the window to see kind of what was happening. And as she was going up to the window, she kind of looked inside, and that's when she saw the pictures flashing much quicker than they were supposed to be. All these images were going through, and the woman, she was just sitting there twitching and screaming. And the next thing she knew, the woman just vanished out of the room, and she just sat there terrified, like, wait, what just happened here? The woman just vanished. And so she ran back over, and the machine kind of just slowly kind of sparked and then shut down, but it's still at the very end printed this report. And so she's like, what is this report going to say? Like, so she kind of pulls out this report to see what it says, and she saw that these neural waves that were once separated were as one. And they searched the whole facility, they searched outside, but she was gone. She was completely gone. And they were like, what happened to her? Where did she go? And so there's a lot of speculation of what was happening, but poor Linda, she couldn't really get a direct answer because it was classified. So Linda wanted to really know what was going on here, like what happened to this girl that just vanished. But the officer kind of just kicked her out, and after that they flew her home. It was all just hush hush. And she didn't know what happened. She didn't know if the girl survived, where'd she go, if it was meant to happen. Like, she just had no idea. And the story went cold. And so she was just like, okay, well, I guess I just go back to my job and all that. But for some reason, she couldn't stop thinking about what was going on. So she started kind of doing some research and looking into who kind of hired her. And she knew it was the government, but she started kind of finding these connections. After a few years and this nagging her for so long, she actually went back to this facility because she was just like, I have to find out what happened to that girl. And so she went back to this facility, and Site 14 had closed down again like it had before. So she went to this facilities. She walked down all these long corridors to go back to that room where this girl was and where they had done that test. And surprisingly enough, everything in the facility was gone, it seemed like. And so she was just so frustrated because she was like, well, I'm never going to kind of figure this out. But then she saw something. She saw just a folder. It was an empty folder, and all she saw on the empty folder were 3 words, and it said Project Black Veil. And years had gone by, and she just couldn't figure out whatever happened to the girl, so she kind of just lived her life and went on until one day she started hearing about these people and these officers that were coming forward about these tests, and they called it Project Black Veil. So she kind of looked into it, not thinking much of it. She's like, no, this can't be the same thing. But she looked into it. She started seeing that this was the project she worked on, and it even said her by name. And so she was like, who are these people that are keeping records of me? So she kept going down into this report, and that's when she found out what they were really doing. So after she read this report, she realized that what they had done is that poor girl, this 22-year-old girl who was codenamed Raven, they had opened a doorway from her mind to a parallel universe, to another version of Raven herself in this parallel universe. And in that universe, her town, her whole town, and all those people that she loved were in reality, where everything had been bombed and everything had been destroyed, and their reality was there. And everybody was happy and peaceful. This girl Raven, she wanted that reality so badly. She wanted it so badly that she pushed her mind into this other body, this other version of herself. So the two wavelengths that were actually there, that became one, were actually the wavelength of the woman in the parallel universe and this girl named Raven's in our universe. So just know that there are these parallel universes. And in these parallel universes, there are versions of you who are living these beautiful lives that you wish you lived. All those dreams that you have and all those aspirations that you have that you wanted in your own life, someone else is living it, a copy, a version of you. And hey, if this technology ever comes out, maybe you too can experience the life you've always wanted. But be cautious, because remember, the grass isn't always green on the other side. Thanks for watching, and keep your transmission tuned to The Echo Diaries.